Hello everybody. On this episode of In the Kitchen with Andy, we're going to make one of my absolute favorite sandwiches that I've been enjoying pretty much my entire lifetime because my mother cooked these when I was a kid, and one of my dad's best buddies growing up had an Italian restaurant, and we would go there for Italian beef sandwiches. These are absolutely wonderful, just loaded with flavor. And in years past, my mother cooked them this way. And then I learned how to cook them this way. I would start with a rump roast, a sirloin roast, whatever was on sale. Put that in a slow cooker with all sorts of Italian seasonings and garlic and all sorts of other good stuff, and let it cook all day. And it was delicious, and we loved them. But the one thing I was never able to accomplish were those beautiful thin slices of that roast beef that you would get at a wonderful place like Portillo's. So I thought, well, why not let the deli do the roasting and the slicing for me, and use their delicious thinly sliced roast beef, and instead just focus on the sauce, the gravy. So that's what we're going to do today. And it's actually pretty darn easy. The whole sandwich comes together much more rapidly, and the results are fantastic. You're going to love this sandwich. So we got some water here, some garlic powder, oregano, Better Than Bouillon. You can use the little cubes if you like. I prefer the Better Than Bouillon. I think it's got a little richer, deeper flavor to it. Some Kitchen Bouquet for that smokiness. Some lemon, black pepper, little cayenne pepper, just a little bit of spice in there. Salt, and one of my absolute favorite seasonings of all time, Herbes de Provence. And because my wife's a French teacher, I have to pronounce it that way. But this is an absolutely delicious blend of spices that comes, or herbs rather, that come from the south of France that add such an incredible flavor to roasts, to chicken, to turkey, to fish, to all sorts of things, including phenomenal Italian beef. So the one thing that you can't get if you start with sliced roast beef from the deli is a little bit of that rendered fat that you would get off a roast if you made it yourself. So we're going to start by mincing up a little bit of fat that I got from my butcher. Sometimes I get this for free. If they charge me for it, it's dirt cheap. But we're going to chop this up, and then we're going to saute it and get a little bit of that fat out of there to add just an extra layer of flavor and deliciousness to our gravy. So here we go. I've already got about a quarter pound of the fat in the food processor here, and we're just going to pulse that a little bit to get it chopped down. Usually goes pretty quickly. Not looking for anything real fancy here. Okay, that should be good enough. And now I'm just going to transfer this into our saute pan, brown that up, and render out that fat. Okay, so we got the fat minced up a little bit. I'm going to get my pan heating up here, my handy dandy little mobile burner. Now I don't want to get this too hot. You don't want to fry that fat. You want to saute it gently, because what we're trying to do is render out the good stuff, and not all of that fat is going to melt or render out. So we've got to be gentle with it. So let me get this out of here as the pan is warming up for us a little bit. Now, if you don't have a Cuisinart, you can do this by hand if you want. It's going to take a heck of a lot longer to do it, but that'll still work. So let's see what we've got here. Starting to sizzle a little bit. Like I said, we don't want to do this too quickly. Just my flame down. I'd rather be a little bit too low than a little bit too high. This will take a couple of minutes. So far you can see it's starting to brown a little bit on there, but what I really want to do is see some melting, because we are going to strain out the hard parts of the fat here that don't render, don't melt, and we're just going to use the parts that liquefy, because that's going to be the basis for our yummy, yummy gravy. So let me let this brown for a little bit, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like after we've got it rendered. Okay, so this has been cooking for just a couple of minutes, and as you can see, it's starting to brown, but not burn. Kind of foams up a little bit as it's doing this. And when you start seeing a little bit darker brown color, that's probably good enough to take it off the heat and strain it out. Because again, we don't want the solids, we just want the liquid. We just want the liquid portion of the fat to add that extra little flavor to our sauce. So I've got a real fine mesh strainer here over a bowl. I'm just going to scrape this out into the strainer. Nothing to it. And if there's a little bit of stuff stuck into the inside of the pan, that's fine, because that is just flavor. So let that settle down there for just a little bit. I'm getting a wonderful amount of fat, rendered fat, out of the bottom of this. And you know, sometimes fat has a negative connotation, but let's face it, when it comes to a delicious meal, fat is flavor. It's just a plain and simple fact. When I used to own a restaurant, what we found is, it's sad but true, the more fat we could put into a dish, the better it sold, because it's delicious. So here's what I've got. There are a little bit of the solids in there that came with the rendered portion, because the strainer, you know, let a little bit of it through, and that's fine. We don't need a ton of this, but what that is going to give us is some wonderful flavor to build everything else upon. So I'm just going to put that right back in the pan, and that is going to give us just an absolute delicious, lovely, beefy flavor. So now I've got that. We're going to add in all the other seasonings, let that simmer for a little bit, put our beef in there, and we are just about done. Alright, so I've got the fat, the rendered fat back in the pan. That's going to, just on a low flame, it's going to start to simmer. And now we're just going to simply add in the rest of our ingredients, starting with 4 cups of water. Just pour it right in there. And then 2 teaspoons of our beef bouillon, or Better Than Bouillon. If you don't use Better Than Bouillon and you use the little cubes, that's fine. I think this stuff is great, and it just adds just that extra little bit of richness to it. Now I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of the Kitchen Bouquet. And this is heating up as we're doing this. So there's 1, and there's about 1/2. It might have been closer to 2. That's okay. You know, I'll have all the measurements in the description of the video, and I tend to just to kind of guesstimate on this stuff. So now I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. That gives the lemon juice gives the gravy a little acidity, which is always a good thing to add into any sauce. Now I've got 1/2 teaspoon of oregano, and I pretty much use my hand generally, so that might be a little bit more than a teaspoon, but I like oregano, so if we have a little extra in there, that's just fine with me. And okay, now I've got the garlic powder. It's about 1/2 teaspoon of the garlic powder as well. I like garlic, so I'm going to put a little extra in there. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. The beef, to me, you get a little saltiness from the bouillon. You've got to have some saltiness in there. I like to have a little bit of extra. If you don't like that much, that's fine. I always like to use freshly ground black pepper. So this is about, I don't know, 1/4 teaspoon, just a little tiny bit of the cayenne pepper. Not too much, because the people in your family that don't like spicy, you don't want to spice them out too badly. I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit. I want to get this to a simmer. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay, now this is starting to simmer. I got to get all those delicious ingredients combined. And I forgot to put in my Herbes de Provence, so I'm going to put in a good solid pinch of that and let that simmer. And while this is simmering, I'm going to get my broiler going so that can be good and hot. And I've got to let this simmer for a few minutes to combine all those beautiful ingredients. And then in just a little bit, we're going to come back and add the beef. All right, so our sauce, our gravy, the Italians love to call it gravy, has been simmering for a little bit, and you've got to let it go for at least a couple minutes because you want all those amazing flavors in there to combine and really build upon each other. So we've got some great stuff going here. It looks really, really nice. It's nice and dark brown. We got the Herbes de Provence floating in there, adding all those wonderful, wonderful flavors to it. Now here's a really important tip. You've got to make sure when you put the beef in, which I'm going to do next, that this isn't boiling. If you put the beef, this is beautiful, tender, thinly sliced roast beef. If you put that into a boiling sauce, it's going to toughen up the meat. So you want to have this just below the simmer. So let it simmer for a little bit and then turn the heat down. I don't know if you can see the flame or not. I've got it really, really low. So I'm keeping it hot, but it's not boiling. And then it's just a simple matter of taking the beef and putting it in that wonderful sauce. And it's only going to take a minute or two for this beautiful beef to get heated through and through and to absorb some of those beautiful flavors, luscious Italian flavors. We've got oregano and we've got garlic and we've got the Herbes de Provence, and it's all in there and looking absolutely lovely and smelling, smelling so good. So one of the other things I've got here that you can see is a baguette. Now if you go to a place like Portillo's, they are going to serve their beautiful Italian beef on a Turano bread roll. And there's nothing wrong with those Turano bread rolls. If you can find them and you want to use them, that's great. But our family, we really love this baguette from Cuisine de France. And one of the things that I always look for when I'm putting together a recipe is I want every single element of that recipe to be able to stand on its own. And what I'm getting at here is, if I had a Turano bread roll sitting there on the counter, would I want to eat that all by itself? Probably not. But a Cuisine de France baguette, it is really hard to not gobble this whole thing down. This is absolutely fantastic, amazing, delicious bread. So we prefer to use this. So I'm just going to slice this up, or cut it up into some nice little, well, maybe not so little, sandwich rolls of our own, and get these ready to put in the broiler. My broiler is nice and hot, so get these opened up and put them on my broiler pan, or it on my broiler pan. And so this bread is just, oh, it's so fantastic. Grab my tongs. Ooh, the beef is nice and hot. It's steamy but not boiling. It's oh so tender. And this is going to be just a fantastic sandwich. So pile on as much as you want. You got to get some of that gravy in there. And if I may, a little French lesson for my fellow Americans. One of the things that Americans mispronounce all the time is the term au jus. They want their beef sandwich with au jus. But as my French teacher wife has taught me, au jus means with juice. So what's in that pan right now isn't au jus, it's just jus. So we're going to get some of that on there as well because it is so delicious. So I always just kind of spoon a little bit over the meat and then drizzle a little bit onto the bread as well. And A lot of people like their Italian beef like I do, and that's spicy. So we add giardiniara to that and then put the cheese over the top. Now the giardiniara is spicy. It's got some hot peppers in there. And so if you don't like it spicy, but you still want a little bit of that extra veggie flavor, I've sauteed some sweet bell peppers and a little bit of olive oil, and that's how I prepare the sandwich for my wife and daughter. But I'm going to put this one together with the giardiniera. And sometimes a lot of the different giardiniera manufacturers, they have everything in some pretty big chunks. And I don't like the peppers in real big pieces. So what I will do, and what I've done with this jar, is I'll take the big chunks out and I chop them up a little bit more finely, so you don't get a huge blast of heat in any given bite. So a couple of slices of provolone. You can use whatever cheese you want, but the only cheese you should use is provolone. All right, so a couple of slices over the top. Our bread is looking dynamite. The beef is still nice and steamy. I'm going to toss that on the broiler here for just a couple minutes and let that cheese get all melty and gooey and delicious. And we're going to be ready to go in just a little bit. So hopefully I've got enough room here to get in my broiler. And there we go. We'll keep an eye on that, and we'll be back in just a minute. All right, our delicious looking Italian beef sandwich has been sitting in the broiler for just a couple minutes. The cheese is melting, and I think we are ready to go. So let's pop that thing open. Pull her out. Oh, that is just about sandwich perfection. So thinly sliced beef in the gravy, in the sauce, the provolone melted over the top, a little bit of that gravy in the bun on the top. Put that over there and get that on my plate, and we are good to go for a fantastic Italian beef done in a fraction of the time that it would normally take with making your roast on your own. But this doesn't skimp on flavor whatsoever. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a bite of this and see just how we did today. And I think it's going to be pretty good. Oh, oh yeah, oh yeah, that's it right there. So thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry to be talking my mouth full, but this is so darn good I can't stop. So all the ingredients and everything in this is going to be in the description below. I hope you've enjoyed it. Stay tuned. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel. There's plenty more coming. Thanks for watching In the Kitchen with Andy.